Oh, I didn't see you there. Good evening. I'm going to tell you a story. Warhammer Leviathan ruined my life for about a week. This story involves breaking equipment, undelivered deliveries, my anus being destroyed, no actually, my hands being ruined, and my plans being shattered. So stick around and find out what the hell has gone on this week, because it's been bad. So first of all, this starts like many Games Workshop releases, with a little disappointment. I waited in a 2-hour queue on the website 2 weeks in advance to pre-order Leviathan. Did it get delivered on a release day? No. So I was waiting, watching out my front window for the delivery man to arrive. And he didn't come. It got to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought I'd message Games Workshop customer support on the website because their little green chat box guys are actually really helpful. They sent me a tracking number for UPS. I went on the UPS website, put it in. It hadn't even been collected from the depot. I wanted to make this video this week. I needed to get one that day. I went to my friendly local gaming store. Sold out, mate. Went to Games Workshop. 400 copies on the shelves. Where's my pre-order, bro? So I picked one of those up instead, and I'm returning the one I pre-ordered. But hey, it's not all bad. It does mean I got the free battle mat from pre-ordering, and the token set from buying in store. So that was problem number 1 of 1,000. Problem number 2, my goddamn Patreons. In the Discord, I put a poll a couple of weeks ago when I did the pre-order, how they would like me to paint these. I put A for albino and B for bugs. Albino I was going to base on real world animals, like this, and paint them up in a whitey pinky scheme. B was bugs, Starship Trooper bugs. So A and B were the options. One person started to troll me and voted C on the Discord. And then more followed. So I said I would come up with an option C, something C themed. There were many suggestions. Not all of them good. But the one that caught my eye, Cactus, that was the kind of spark that led to this project becoming what it was. This was kind of a blessing in disguise. I think I've ended up with something nicer than if I'd done either of those 2 schemes. But you'll see that as this video goes on, because this is actually a hobby video, not just me chatting absolute nonsense. So let's get into some painting rather than just this. So subscribe and we'll get into it. After creating some chocolate Tyrannids, my plan was to airbrush up in bone colours with a new airbrush bought for me by my lovely patron Nikolai. Thank you, Nikolai. These are the bone colours I'm going to use all the way up to white. Unfortunately, when I tightened the 0.3mm nozzle into the airbrush, I severed it and had to fish out the other end and use the 0.5 nozzle. This one was the only other one in the kit that had been bought for me, and it was all I had, so no detail work with the airbrush. Broad strokes, baby! I used these bone colours in a zenithal fashion, working up all over the top of the Tyranid with the first bone colour, all the way through all of the army. That's right, painting all of these in one go. Right, first step not bad. Way! With the next steps, I worked in smaller and smaller areas, picking up the top edges and making sure it was lighter near the top, where the sun would be coming from on these Cactus desert nids. This was going to be important for laying the foundations for the lighting for the whole army. It did take me about 3 hours to learn how to troubleshoot the airbrush and mix paint correctly for the airbrush, but it's not that hard. I would definitely recommend this for everyone. The speed of this airbrush really saved this project. I wouldn't have been able to do this project in a week without this airbrush. So thank you, Nikolai. I didn't just want to do a green cactus because that's a little bit bland as a colour palette for, you know, a whole army. So what I did is I googled colourful cactuses and found this lovely guy here. And this is the kind of colour palette I'm going to go for. Touch of yellow and a little essence of pink. I started laying down green from up underneath the Tyranids, as this would be the darkest colour in the colour palette on these nids, and I wanted it to be coming from underneath so the top can be lighter later on. Again, Airbrush is a lifesaver. This is the first project I've ever used this on, and I've been kind of questioning why I haven't got one sooner. This kit is £100 on Amazon, and it comes with everything you need to start, apart from paint and thinner obviously. So I will actually link that in the description below so you can have a look at this kit if you think it's something that'll be suitable for you. I recommend it. Painting green on these nids was nice and fast. I got all of them done very quickly. And as you can see here, I've left the higher points for the yellow to come in a bit later. This looks good. They do look a little bit Shrek. I'll give you that. They are Shrek green, but that will change later on. Imperial Fist contrast. Now I didn't have a lot of this left, so I had to use it sparingly. Luckily, it was only going to be the top highlights on the Tyranids, which were also zenithalled with white up from bone, which would make them even brighter. I think this worked very nicely, and I was very happy with the outcome of this paint job so far on these models. So far, no issues. The only step so far that hasn't presented any issues. Here they all are. They're looking very planty, but very neon. As I said, this will be addressed later. I'm starting this bright so I can go darker later with the weathering steps to bring them back down. Doomfire Magenta, the pinkiest of pinks. I use this in all the little gashes, slits, whatever word I use is going to sound disgusting. And all the tubes and strange gribbly bits on these Tyranids. This was the little zing of different colour in the colour palette from the Cactus that I could use to define the different points while still treating this as speed painting. And it went straight over the yellow and green with no issues. Even with a couple of layers of contrast, you could still see the zenithal undercoat coming through underneath. It picked out little areas and just gave it a little bit of flavour, and I really like it. This big brain boy is the one to show you. So obviously the big brain is going to be this pink colour, and I think it looked lovely. This pink colour looks like it tastes like raspberries. It's delicious looking. I haven't sipped it yet, but I am very tempted. This brain boy is one of my favourite models in the Leviathan box. I do love it. As you can see, I think he looks like this Cactus now, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing. But yeah, just an interesting side note. I was painting a different Cactus and I made this Cactus. I thinned it a little bit to do the wings on this guy. I think that worked a bit nicer because I didn't want them to be as bright. I want them to be like a different kind of material to all the other pink innards that were showing, because the gashes on Tyranid's arm do look like innards. And also, my paint water now looked delicious. So tempting to swig. Day 2. I thought, what could go wrong? I was at work during the day and I had a lovely free lunch. They served a lovely free lunch. And then I got reminded, no lunch is actually free. Explosive diarrhea! Why am I talking about this? So in between nearly every shot that you're about to see for day 2, I was running to the loo. It was bad. Real bad. Between toilet breaks, I painted the eyes and the teeth with white and bone colours. This was pretty good, just one layer over the top. The original plan for the eyes was to put some neon yellow over as a glow effect with the 0.3 nozzle of the airbrush. Obviously, I don't have that anymore, so I need to buy another one, which I will do, but for now I just left them white. I think this was good for now, as I could go back over later with the neon when I get a new nozzle. The teeth were easy to pick out. All the Tyranids had a few little teeth, but not all of them had eyes. Next catastrophe. I wanted to put this sandy desert terrain stuff on the bases with my plastic spatula, but then I realised the fat end of my spatula had broken off and I was just left with this thin end here. I don't know when this had happened, but travesty. One thing, not break! So I used a brush that I hated because it was already a bit destroyed, and a little bit of the spatula when needed. After that, the basing was done. In between basing and the toilet breaks, this took up the rest of the evening, and I was nearly done with day 2. The AK Interactive diorama line are good for basing as well. It's just a bigger pot of texture paint for cheap. Alright, day 2 done. Day 3, I had some heavy lifting to do here because these guys are still incredibly neon kind of colours, and that's not really a cactus. Cactus is a little bit darker. So it's time to grimdark up these cactus boys. First port of call for grimdark weathering, it's obviously my best friend Streaking Grime. I know I use it in every project, but I really like it. Thinned down with some white spirit to get it through the airbrush, and it flowed on lovely, covering all these nids in no time at all. Again, airbrush. It's the future, kids. This is what I was going to use to bring down the colour tone of these models. Although you do pull it back off and clean it, it still leaves some residue all over the model a bit, so it is a darker, dustier tone than when you started. This was really going to help me un-neon these nids to be more cactusy. A little side note about something I did before I started this was put Iandon yellow contrast on this nid smoke plume thing so it looked like thick pollen flowing out of the cactus. As someone with hay fever, that's terrifying. I only had the end of a bottle of Dirty Down Rust left, so when it's not mixed properly like this because there's not enough left in the bottle, you end up with this kind of dark, glossy rust colour, which I wasn't mad at. I quite like it. Unintended. If you don't mix Dirty Down Rust properly, this is how it goes. So bear that in mind. Might be useful actually in the future, if you've got a project where you want the metal to look like this. I then applied some sandy looking stones with PVA glue to the base because I was going to put flock or plants or something on here, but they are the plants. They are the plants on this base. So instead of adding more flora, I decided to add more landscape. And this was nice, I think. This was a nice little touch, make it look like it's not just a flat, boring area. This is some kind of wasteland rather than just a dry, dusty desert. This took a fair while, but I still had some hours left in the day. These nids are looking great so far. I really like them. This has brought the tone down nicely, and I'm happy with what's going on so far, despite my setbacks. I'm in a positive mood, baby! Now that that part's done, it's time to fulfill the requests of my trolling Patreons, which you can join if you want, down in the description. I'd popped to my local garden centre and bought this cheap cactus, and then murdered his friend. I bought 3 just in case, and this is what I did to him. I cut every spike off and organised them by size. After getting poked more times than your mum, I was ready to put spines on my cactus Tyrannids. This didn't work. Short and simple. Didn't work. They didn't stand up. Once I got the contact point there, it just fell over. Not a big enough contact point, and it was really hard to get them to stand upright. Occasionally, I did get a few to work, although this took a very, very long time. Once I'd get one on, the next one would fall over, and so on and so forth. This was disappointing, as this was a large part of my plan for these Tyrannids. Yeah, I was in a good mood, and this started to really irritate me, plus it really bloody hurt. My fingers were in absolute tatters after dealing with this many cactus spikes. How does your mum take so many pricks? So as you can see, this wasn't really going to be a viable option. I did want to give little spikes to every Tyrannid here, but time was running short. It wasn't working, so I had to think again, quickly. Luckily, your boy's got a brain in his head, and he came up with a plan to produce these lovely spiky boys. Look at these cactus nids. I had done it. All of the big guys were now the ones to get spikes. They were the most important. This one with the pollen powder absolutely looks fantastic. This is my favourite one now. Brain Boy also looks defensive, protecting that big squishy dome of his. It definitely looks like he needs a bit of protection on that dome, and this adds the kind of spikage to do that. This guy got a few just behind the shoulder plates, but he was really the smallest nid I could go with for this plan, apart from my boy, the little leader of these dogs. I'd fell in love with these little doggy ones over the course of this project. With my green paint style, they do look like aphids, and I really enjoy it, and to be honest, I want some more of these. The way I did this was by using the spikes in their natural kind of cluster. Previously, I was cutting off this cluster and then separating it from there, but using this, it gave a larger contact point to put super glue on. With one cactus dead, one looking buggered, and another one looking scared, I was done with my spiking. You better watch out, Cactus. You're next. I bought this Desert Dust pigment powder from Vallejo, specifically for this project, but unfortunately, it looked awful when I put it on. This is because the Streaking Grime had really brought down the tone of the sand as well as the nids, and it just didn't look right. It looked like white chalk all over the base. So again, different plan was needed. Your boy's got brains again, and he used this brown one that he already owned, so he didn't really need to buy a new one, and that looked pretty good. Kind of gave a bit of a more red vibe. This is more like a Martian or Arizona desert, and I'm not unhappy with that. Now, with everything broken, my mind, my hands, my plans, my tools and my anus, I was done. Finally finished these Cactus Tyrannids. I think they look pretty damn good. I'd say their table's top ready. They're not my top tier paint job. May revisit in future. So what you're about to see is the end result. But before that, thank you to my Patreons. Their names will be over the end shots as always. If you'd like to support me, links up here right now. There's a couple of different benefits. There's a Discord, have a little gander, and the link will be down there in the description as well. If you don't want to do that, subscribe. 'Tis free, good person. Tickle my like button and send this to someone who you think would like to hear a story about Cactus Tyrannids and my leaky anus. So as always, remember, it's not a pile of shame, it's a pile of future fun. See you next week.